In 2011, a book called Getting Things Done sold millions of copies by teaching people to capture every task in a trusted external system process. It systematically and execute it without using mental energy to remember what needed to happen next. In 2018, Atomic Habits sold even more by teaching people that the goal of productivity is not willpower. It is the construction of systems so reliable that the right behavior happens automatically, without requiring a decision each time. Both books were celebrated as breakthroughs, and in the context of modern self-help they were. But the core insight in each of them, that reliable systems produce better outcomes than effortful. Decision-making in the moment had already been encoded, practiced and refined in Japanese culture for at least 500 years, before either author was born. The Japanese word is kata. Kata means literally form or pattern. It entered the language through martial arts, where it describes the precise sequences of movement that practitioners repeat thousands of times, over years, until the movements become not just memorized but absorbed, until the body knows what to do before the conscious mind has finished deciding. A kata in kendo, the Japanese sword art, encodes centuries of accumulated knowledge about how to move in conflict. Every angle of the blade, every shift of the feet, every transition from one position to the next, refined by generations of practitioners, encoded into a form that can be transmitted and repeated. The purpose of the kata is not aesthetic, though they can be beautiful to watch. The purpose is transfer. The kata moves knowledge from the level of conscious understanding, where it must be retrieved and applied deliberately, down to the level of automatic response, where it requires neither retrieval nor decision. Once you have a kata, you don't think about the movement. You move. What this does for performance is something modern. Cognitive science now describes in precise terms. The human brain has two broad modes of processing. The first is slow, deliberate, effortful, what psychologists call System 2 thinking. It handles novel problems, requires conscious attention, and consumes significant mental energy. It is accurate but expensive. The second is fast, automatic, and low-effort System 1. It handles familiar patterns, requires no conscious attention, and consumes almost no mental energy. It is fast, but only as good as the patterns it has been trained on. The kata is a technology for moving things from System 2 to System 1. You practice a sequence deliberately, consciously, attentively, until the sequence no longer requires deliberation, consciousness, or attention. The cognitive cost of execution drops towards zero, and here is what this makes possible, which the kata tradition understood. Long before cognitive science named it when the execution of a task becomes automatic, the mind that was occupied with execution is freed. Freed for what can only be done consciously, for creativity, for adaptation, for the higher-order problems that arise in the middle of doing. The swordsman who has internalized the kata can think about strategy, while his body handles technique. The musician who has internalized the scales can think about expression, while her hands handle the notes. The writer who has internalized the structure of a sentence can think about what to say, while the grammar takes care of itself. This is not a metaphor. This is literally what happens in the brain. When procedural knowledge is fully consolidated, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for conscious control, steps back. The basal ganglia, the part responsible for automatic behavior, takes over, and the cognitive resources that were managing execution become available for something else. In the 20th century, Toyota engineers applied the kata concept to manufacturing. They called it Toyota Kata Standardized Routines for how work gets done, how problems get identified, how improvement gets practiced. Every step of every process was codified into a form that workers repeated consistently, not because consistency was valued for its own sake, but because consistency was what allowed problems to become visible. This was the key insight that took decades for Western manufacturing to absorb. Variation is the enemy of learning, not just the enemy of quality. If a process varies every time it is performed, you cannot tell whether an outcome resulted from the process or from the variation. You cannot identify what went wrong or what went right. You cannot improve what you cannot isolate. The system is too noisy to learn from. A kata creates the stable baseline against which deviation is observable. And deviation, once visible, can be studied, understood, and corrected not through blame or extra effort, but through systematic revision of the form itself. The problem is in the kata. Fix the kata. Mike Rother, the researcher who documented Toyota's approach in the book, Toyota Kata, noted something striking. Toyota managers spent the majority of their time not solving problems themselves, but teaching their teams the routine of how to approach problems systematically. The kata of problem-solving practiced until it became second. Nature was more valuable than any individual solution. This is why Toyota's production system became one of the most studied management philosophies of the 20th century, not because Japanese workers were more disciplined or more talented, but because the kata-based approach made problems visible in ways that less structured systems could not. And visible problems can be fixed. The Silicon Valley iteration of this idea appears under many names: systematic, continuous improvement, process thinking, operational excellence. The underlying logic is identical to what Toyota's engineers learned from a tradition that began in Japanese sword schools 5 centuries earlier. Here is where this becomes usable in everyday work. Most people manage their work in their heads. They remember what needs to happen, decide in the moment how to handle it, and rely on the energy of motivation to initiate tasks that don't feel urgent. This works tolerably well on easy days. On hard days, when the list is long, when energy is low, when multiple priorities compete, the system collapses because the system was always just a person trying to hold too much at once, until the mental load exceeds capacity, until motivation fails, until a dropped ball reveals that what felt like a system was never really a system at all. The kata approach to personal work is different in one fundamental way. It removes decision from execution wherever possible, not by removing thinking by moving thinking earlier, to the level of design, so that the execution itself requires less of it. You decide in advance how your morning starts, not each morning. You decide in advance what kind of tasks deserve your first 2 hours, not each day when the hours arrive. You decide in advance what a completed project looks like before you begin it, so that during the work itself, you are executing rather than figuring out what executing means. This is the same logic as the kata. The form is established in advance. The practice is the form. What gets easier as the kata consolidates is not the tasks themselves. They remain as demanding as they were. What gets easier is the overhead, the decision fatigue, the motivational friction, the mental energy spent figuring out what to do next rather than doing it. These costs drop as the routine absorbs them. Building a kata is simpler than it sounds. Pick one repeating responsibility in your work, something you do regularly, where the process varies more than the content requires. It might be how you start your workday, how you handle incoming email, how you prepare for meetings, how you structure a piece of writing. Something you do often enough that a consistent approach would pay dividends. Define the steps, not the ideal steps, the actual steps, in the order. They actually need to happen. Write them down, then follow the written sequence the next 3 times. You do it, exactly, without improvising or improving on the fly. Notice what the form reveals. Where does it create friction? Where does following it remove the friction of deciding? What step done consistently makes the next step easier? What, when you look at it written out, turns out to be unnecessary? Note these things, revise the form, then practice the revised form until it no longer requires attention. This is the kata cycle. Design, practice, observe, refine, not once, not until it feels polished, but continuously, because the form that exists today is better than the improvisation it replaced. And the form that exists in 3 months will be better than today's. The improvement never finishes. The kata is always in motion. 500 years before the first productivity app, Japanese practitioners were optimizing performance by exactly this logic. Not through harder effort or stronger will, but through the patient refinement of repeatable form. The kata was never a secret. It was simply waiting to be recognized for what it is. If this kind of applied wisdom, the kind that connects ancient practice to modern science and makes both more useful, is something you want more of, follow for more. There's a lot here.